Kim l'sheira korov elov. He's permitted to contaminate himself to the one who's closest to him, which is his wife. Share always refers to the flesh, the one who he's in contact with her flesh, which is his wife. Li'imo l'oviv, his mother, his father. Livno levito l'ochiv, his father, mother, his son, his daughter, and his brother. V'lachos apsula, akrov elov, his sister who's a virgin, who's krov elov. Meaning, if she's single, she's not married, then he's permitted to contaminate. If she's married to a person, then he's not permitted. Let's see, Rashi, Hakrova, the rabbis is Arusa, meaning until the marriage has fully been consummated, she's still connected to him. There's a mitzvah for her to contaminate. For the Kohen to contaminate, although normally it's not permitted, these relatives, there's a mitzvah to contaminate. It was known, the Vilna Gaon, although he wasn't a Kohen, he never went to a cemetery. The Vilna Gaon never went to a cemetery because he was at a level, the Vilna Gaon, in terms of his sensitivity to impurity, and there were certain vistas of Kedusha available to him that if he become contaminated, it would create blockages. So for that reason, he did not go to a cemetery, because cemetery is the most extreme level of impurity. The nether forces, as we discussed. So he would never go to a cemetery. However, when his parents died, his father and mother passed away, of course, there's a mitzvah to contaminate himself. So he went and he put his hands over the body. We know that anything which is above a corpse, Tumah always rises. We're talking about the contamination of the dead arises. It's called Tumas Oem. That's why if you have the remains under an area where you have a roof covering, the contamination is contained within that location. So the Vilna Gaon, to fill the mitzvah of Lo Yitama, that is a mitzvah to be contaminated, he put his hands over the body, so he should be contaminated. But under normal circumstances, he would not allow himself to become contaminated for what I just explained. Lo Yitama Bal Ba'amov Lecholo. What does it mean? Lo Yitama Bal Ba'amov Lecholo. He's not permitted to contaminate to a person he's married to, where it's a forbidden marriage. He's married to a grusha, to a divorcee. And she's Ba'amov, meaning she's not a mes mitzvah. If it would be a mes mitzvah, it's not relevant whether it's his wife or not his wife. So there are others who could attend to her burial needs. And this woman, he's not permitted to contaminate himself because she desecrated him. Lo yitam lishto psulo shumchulo lo bodi imo chen pshuto shel mikro lo yitame bal b'sheiro b'od shi b'sochamov shesh lo kovrim she'ena mes mitzvah. This woman, if she's not a mes mitzvah, so as a husband, he's not permitted to contaminate. Ube'ezeh she'er amarti b'osa shi lecholo. What kind of wife are we speaking about that he's not permitted? It's lecholo lischalelhu bikunoso, because she desecrates his kuna. That's the reason why if he has a child from this woman, the child is not a Kohen, because he desecrated his seed, and therefore he's a Kohen, his child's not a Kohen. Lo yikru korcho. Rosha. They're not permitted to create bald spots on their head. This is speaking about, this even applies even to a non-Kohen. A person is grieving over the dead, and he begins pulling out his hair because he cannot contain himself, because the pain, he can't tolerate his grief. It's a Torah violation. They're not permitted to destroy the corners of the face. This is the basis, even though it's stated by a Kohen, but it applies even to a non-Kohen. Meaning to use a straight blade to shave where the blade destroys the root of the hair, that's called giluach. It's Torah violation. Some of these usarotis. Or people, if they're grieving and if they can't contain themselves, they began tearing at their flesh, they began lacerating themselves. Also, it's a Torah violation. So we hear, just to address some of it. It says regarding a non-Kohen, losashis, he's not permitted to destroy the corners of his face. He said he's not permitted to round the corners of his head. That's why a Jew has to keep his sideburns. And he's what? And he's not permitted to destroy the corners of his face. So the terminology uses tashchis. So if you say tashchis means if you cut a hair from its root, whatever manner if you take a tweezer and you pull out the hair, you've taken it out from the root. Maybe it should be a violation. But here the Torah uses the term lo yigalech. It's only the way you normally would shave. So therefore, pulling it out, person normally doesn't shave by using the tweezer, pulling out the hair, or using some kind of other implement, which one normally doesn't shave with. So therefore, let's say, years ago, before they had the electric shaver, we have a crosscut, difference between a blade and a scissor. One's a crosscut, and one's directly, the blade touches the root of the hair. That's considered destroying it, and that's the way one normally shaves. But years ago, they used to use religious people. They wanted to have a close shave. Observant people, they would use a depilatory. They would make this type of sulfur mixture, put it on their face, and then they would take it off. Sometimes if they leave it on too long, they get burnt. That actually burnt their skin. It had a terrible sulfur smell, had a terrible smell. But years ago, that's what people used to use. But you're destroying the hair at the root. The answer is because that's not normally the way you shave. You may be destroying the root, but it's only lo yigalechu. It has to be derech giluach, the way one normally shaves. That's the Torah violation. Okay? Rashi says, "Fishnever b'shel lo sashlis yochol likto b'malkut hitnu yechayev." Maybe if one removed the hair from its root with a malkut, with a tweezer, or hitni with a plane, maybe you should be liable. The way one normally shaves, and the shaving is in the manner which you destroy the hair at its root. And what is that's a tar? That's a straight blade. That's a knife. It says by Yisrael, a Jew is not permitted to lacerate himself. So let's say a person goes and he creates 5 lacerations. Maybe he should only be liable for one. That's one violation. Talmud Lomar, Sisu Sorotes, that for every laceration he lacerates himself as to express his grief, it's a separate violation. Because there's something separate. So to tell me that you're liable for 5 malchus, it's considered 5 violations, even if it does them simultaneously.
Rabbi?
Wait 1 second. So over here, there's a Sipurno in Dvorim where it explains. Over there it says that why does he grieve to such a degree that he can't contain it? He can't tolerate the pain, the loss. It's one of 2 reasons. Either because you're concerned about the one who passed away, and because you can imagine what he's undergoing, and therefore you're paying for this, and the pain is uncontainable, therefore he begins pulling the hair out of his head and begin lacerating himself, or because you're at a loss, because since that person's not here any longer, you're left bereft and abandoned, and you can't deal with this level of solitude. You're all left by yourself. So over there, based on the pasuk, the way the Sifron explains, that you're wrong on 2 accounts. It's a lack of belief, because firstly, the person who dies, passes away, he's in a better place than he could ever be in this existence. Because this world is only a medium to come to the world to come. That's the ultimate level. And the person who feels that he's been abandoned and he's left bereft and he's in a state of solitude, if a person has emunah, a Jew is never left abandoned. He has Hashem. So behaving in such a manner where you can't contain yourself, you feel that your life is over and your life's not worth living, that itself is a breach of emunah, of faith in God. Therefore, it's a Torah violation to behave this way, to lacerate yourself or pull the hair out of your head, to indicate that you can't contain yourself. That's a sephara.